On November 12, 1942, an industrial miracle unfolded in Richmond, California. A colossal cargo vessel stretching 441 feet and weighing over 14,000 tons was poised to enter the waters of San Francisco Bay. This was the SS Robert E. Peary, a Liberty ship, but its true significance lay not in its size, but in the astonishing speed of its creation. It had been fully assembled in a mere 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. This feat of rapid construction stood in stark contrast to centuries of maritime tradition, where master shipwrights would dedicate 6 to 8 months to a single vessel of comparable dimensions. Here, a complete cargo ship was ready for the war effort, built not by seasoned craftsmen, but by a diverse crew of over 1,000 individuals, former office workers, farmhands, homemakers, and general labourers who had been trained in the art of welding only weeks prior. The shipbuilding revolution was underway, a testament to American manufacturing innovation that would redefine industrial potential. The crowd of government officials, reporters, and rival shipyard proprietors had gathered to witness a spectacle that would send shockwaves through the world of industrial production. The very mathematics of the Allied war effort were being rewritten, not in the war rooms of generals, but in the production figures of this Californian shipyard. Every established belief about the limits of shipbuilding, construction timelines, and industrial capability was about to be shattered. This was a story of how an outsider, a civilian with an impossible idea, transformed an entire industry and helped turn the tide of the Second World War. The genesis of this manufacturing upheaval can be traced to December 27, 1940. On that day, Henry Kaiser, a man who had built a formidable reputation moving earth and pouring concrete for colossal dam projects across the American West, signed his very first shipbuilding contract. At 58, the construction magnate had never built a ship, never overseen a shipyard, yet he had just given his word to the United States Maritime Commission that he would deliver 30 cargo vessels to the British government in under 2 years. The established shipbuilders of the era, steeped in generations of tradition, scoffed at him, viewing him as an audacious and uninformed opportunist. The venerable Todd Bath Iron Works, one of the nation's oldest shipyards, had cautiously entered into a partnership with Kaiser, believing their deep-seated expertise would be enough to mitigate his glaring lack of experience. What they, and the entire maritime world, failed to grasp was that Kaiser's ignorance of shipbuilding conventions would become his most powerful weapon. Among the skeptics was William Francis Gibbs, the nation's most esteemed naval architect. His firm, Gibbs & Cox, had drafted the very blueprints for the Liberty ship, adapting a British design for American production. Gibbs had designed more ships than Kaiser had likely ever laid eyes on. The journey from widespread disbelief to industrial revolution began in the New York planning offices of Todd Shipyards in early 1941. As Kaiser and his team of engineers delved into the traditional shipbuilding process, they had an immediate and stark realization. The conventional methods were utterly inadequate to meet the crushing demands of a world at war. Clay Bedford, Kaiser's chief engineer, had recently returned from a visit to a Ford Motor Company assembly line in Detroit. The sight of automobile chassis gliding down a production line, with workers systematically installing prefabricated parts at each station, had left an indelible mark. Bedford was convinced that ships, despite their immense scale and complexity, could be constructed in precisely the same manner. The traditionalists in the room found the comparison laughable, a gross oversimplification of a noble craft. But for Kaiser, it was the key to unlocking unprecedented speed and efficiency in the race to build a bridge of ships across the Atlantic. The first major disruption to the established order came with Kaiser's audacious proposal to completely abandon riveting. For centuries, ship construction was a symphony of synchronized labor, where teams of skilled riveters would heat metal pins and hammer them through overlapping steel plates, creating the vessel's skeleton. A proficient riveting crew in a full day's work might install 1,000 rivets. With each Liberty ship requiring approximately 1 million rivets, the bottleneck was obvious. Kaiser, drawing from his experience building massive pipelines, advocated for electric arc welding. This proposal was met with profound skepticism. Vice Admiral Emory Land, the head of the U.S. Maritime Commission, scrutinized the idea with a wary eye. His private letters, now housed in the National Archives, reveal the deep-seated resistance of the maritime establishment. Welding has never been proven reliable for hull construction at this scale, he wrote. The British Navy forbids welding on warship hulls. Kaiser is proposing we bet America's supply lines on an unproven technology. Yet the grim reality of the war at sea could not be ignored. German U-boats and surface raiders were sending Allied merchant ships to the ocean floor faster than they could be replaced. In 1941 alone, the Allies lost a staggering 3.6 million tons of shipping. Great Britain was on the brink of starvation. American shipyards, clinging to their conventional methods, took an average of 230 days to construct a single cargo ship. At that rate, the Battle of the Atlantic would be lost before American industry could even begin to make a difference. The decision to greenlight Kaiser's contract was not born of confidence, but of sheer, unadulterated necessity. It was a desperate gamble in a high-stakes game for survival. Between January and December of 1941, the Richmond shipyard rose from the barren mudflats of San Francisco Bay. Kaiser's construction crews, seasoned by the challenges of building dams and highways, erected a facility that was an affront to every principle of traditional maritime engineering. In place of the towering gantry cranes and long, singular building ways that defined established shipyards, Richmond was a sprawling open-air factory. It was designed not for crafting a single vessel over many months, but for the mass assembly of many. The layout mirrored that of an automobile plant, with vast areas dedicated to prefabrication surrounding 7 parallel building ways. A web of railroad tracks crisscrossed the facility, designed to transport colossal steel sections weighing up to 150 tons. Overhead cranes, with a lifting capacity that was deemed absurdly excessive by critics, stood ready to hoist entire sections of a ship's hull into place. John Riley, the chief naval architect for Bethlehem Steel Corporation and a 30-year veteran of the industry, visited the Richmond yard in May 1941. His confidential report was a mixture of technical critique and grudging respect. Kaiser has violated every principle of efficient shipyard layout I learned in 3 decades of experience, he wrote. Yet I must admit the facility is designed for exactly what he claims, rapid assembly of prefabricated sections. The next phase of this industrial revolution was fueled by a new kind of workforce. Traditional shipyards drew their labour from established maritime communities, where the intricate skills of the trade were passed down through generations. Kaiser, however, cast a much wider net. He placed advertisements in newspapers across the nation, offering wages that were a full 20% higher than the standard industrial rates, and, most importantly, promising to train anyone with a willingness to work. The first wave of these new recruits arrived in Richmond in August 1941, a diverse collection of individuals from all walks of life, united by a common purpose. The genius of Kaiser's system lay in its simplification of complex tasks. The devastatingly effective methods borrowed from assembly line manufacturing broke down the monumental job of building a ship into a series of repeated simple operations. By October 1941, the Richmond shipyard employed over 10,000 workers, yet fewer than 200 of them had any prior maritime experience. In a traditional apprenticeship, a welder would spend 4 years honing their craft, learning a comprehensive set of skills. At Kaiser's training schools, instructors taught specific techniques for specific tasks in approximately 2 weeks. A worker didn't need to know how to weld every part of a ship. They only needed to master the vertical seams on a bulkhead, the horizontal plates of a deck, or the curved sections of the hull, and they would perform that single task repeatedly, achieving a level of proficiency through sheer repetition. As this new workforce gained experience through the latter half of 1941 and into early 1942, a remarkable trend emerged. The construction time for Liberty ships began to fall at a dramatic rate. Kaiser's first Liberty ship, a learning experience for all involved, took 197 days to build and deliver. The second ship required 169 days. By the 5th ship, the time was down to 128 days. The 10th ship was completed in just 97 days. By the spring of 1942, the Richmond shipyard was completing Liberty ships in an average of 70 days. The traditional shipyards watched with a mixture of awe and alarm as this supposedly unskilled workforce achieved production speeds that rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, their own highly skilled crews. The prefabrication approach, once dismissed by the old guard as impractical, was proving its immense power. Instead of the slow, sequential process of building a ship from the keel up, Kaiser's yards were fabricating entire sections simultaneously across the sprawling facility. While one crew assembled a bow section in a designated prefabrication area, other crews were busy constructing the stern, the deck house, the engine room, and the bulkheads in parallel. Once these massive components were complete, the giant cranes would lift them onto the building ways, where teams of welders would join them together. Albert Wooding, a production supervisor at Richmond Yard No. 2, articulated the efficiency of the process in a 1943 interview with Fortune magazine. "In traditional shipbuilding industrielle," he explained, "you cannot install the engine until the engine room is built. You cannot build the engine room until the hull is complete. Everything happens in sequence. Kaiser's approach allows parallel production. While one crew welds hull plates, another crew assembles the engine in a separate area. When both are ready, we drop the completed engine into the completed engine room and weld it in place. Tasks that previously required weeks now take hours. The statistics bore this out. A conventional shipyard might have 50 workers toiling for 3 weeks to install an engine within the cramped confines of a partially built ship. At Richmond, 200 workers would assemble the complete engine and its mounting structure in an open workshop over 5 days. The entire assembly would then be lifted by crane and positioned in a single 8-hour operation. As construction speeds surged through the spring and summer of 1942, a new dynamic emerged: a spirited competition among Kaiser's 7 shipyards, which were spread across California, Oregon, and Washington. Henry Kaiser's son, Edgar, who served as vice president and general manager, oversaw the Oregon Shipbuilding Corporation in Portland. Clay Bedford, meanwhile, managed the Richmond yards in California. These 2 ambitious leaders fostered an informal contest to see which facility could build ships the fastest. This race between Richmond and Portland quickly captured the public's imagination, with newspapers publishing daily updates like sports scores. Production records were shattered repeatedly. The competition reached a fever pitch in September 1942, when the Oregon shipyard built the SS Joseph N. Teal in an incredible 10 days. The relentless pace eventually prompted Vice Admiral Vickery to order a halt to the speed contests, which he dismissed as stunt demonstrations that could potentially distract from the real production goals. However, the competition had already served its purpose. It had instilled in the workforce across all 7 yards the belief that extraordinary speed was not just achievable, but expected. The ultimate demonstration of this newfound capability came in November 1942. Vice Admiral Land was visiting the Richmond Yard to inspect the production lines. In an offhand comment to a group of journalists which was overheard by Clay Bedford, the Admiral remarked that while Liberty ship construction had improved dramatically, the recent speed record still paled in comparison to what mass production had achieved in other industries. Bedford, a man driven by ambition and a fierce sense of pride, took the comment as a personal challenge. He approached Vice Admiral Land with a bold proposition. Richmond Yard No. 2 would attempt to build a complete Liberty ship, from the laying of the keel to its launch, in under 5 days. This would effectively cut the record set by the Joseph N. Teal in half. Land, though sceptical, was intrigued. He authorized the attempt, but with one crucial condition: it must not disrupt the regular production schedules. Bedford selected the 47th hull to be built at Yard No. 2 for this record-breaking attempt. The ship was to be named the SS Robert E. Peary, in honor of the famed Arctic explorer. Starting at 1 minute past midnight on Sunday, November 8th, a team of over 1,000 workers, operating in meticulously coordinated shifts, would embark on a task that was unprecedented in the long and storied history of maritime construction. The prefabrication strategy, which had been honed over the preceding months, reached its zenith in the construction of the Peary. Every major component of the ship had been built, inspected and staged before the keel even touched the building way. The bow section, a complex assembly of more than 50 individual pieces, was fully welded and outfitted with its anchor hardware, chain lockers, and forward crew quarters before the assembly process even began. The stern section was similarly complete, with the steering gear, propeller shaft, and aft crew spaces already in place. 4 complete cargo holds, each a massive rectangular steel structure, were ready to be lifted into position. The engine, a 140-ton triple-expansion steam power plant built by the Joshua Hendy Iron Works in Sunnyvale, had been mounted on its foundation and tested before it even left the factory. While conventional shipyards painstakingly built a vessel from the keel up over a period of months, Kaiser's yard was about to assemble a nearly complete ship from its prefabricated sections in a matter of days. 4 days into the construction, the hull was complete. The engine was installed, the deck houses were in position, the cargo holds were secured, and the steering gear was mounted. On Thursday, November the 12th, at 3:30 p.m., a mere 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes after the keel had touched the building way, the SS Robert E. Peary slid down the launching rails and into the waters of San Francisco Bay. The ship was delivered for service on November 15th, setting an additional record of 7 days, 14 hours, and 32 minutes from the laying of the keel to full delivery. The crowd of observers, which included maritime officials, military officers, competing shipyard owners, and journalists from across the nation, had arrived expecting to witness either a failure or, at best, a compromised vessel that looked complete but lacked functionality. What they saw instead was a fully operational ship that required only minor outfitting before it could enter service. Vice Admiral Land, who was present for the launching, delivered a brief but powerful speech that was captured by newsreel cameras. His words mark the maritime establishment's forced acknowledgement that the world of shipbuilding had been irrevocably altered. 6 months ago, he declared, I would have called this impossible. Traditional shipbuilding wisdom, accumulated over 3,000 years, said you cannot build a proper ship in 5 days. Henry Kaiser has made traditional wisdom obsolete. The United States Maritime Commission will now require all contracted shipyards to adopt these methods. The psychological impact on the traditional shipbuilding industry was both profound and immediate. The very same shipyards that had arrogantly dismissed Kaiser as an ignorant outsider just 18 months earlier were now dispatching their engineers to study his revolutionary techniques. The president of the New York Shipbuilding Corporation, one of America's oldest and most prestigious yards, visited the Richmond facility in December 1942. His confidential report to his board of directors was a stunning admission of ideological defeat. Kaiser has achieved what our industry considered impossible by refusing to accept our limitations, he wrote. He treated shipbuilding as a manufacturing problem rather than a craft tradition. He simplified where we sought perfection. He standardized where we customized. He trained masses of unskilled workers where we cultivated generational expertise. The result is ships built in 1/10 the time at 2/3 the cost. We must either adopt his approaches or accept irrelevance. By early 1943, Kaiser's influence had completely transformed American maritime production. 18 shipyards across the country were now building Liberty ships using the principles of prefabrication and welding. The average construction time, which had been 230 days at the outset of the program, had plummeted to just 42 days by the middle of 1943. The United States was now launching 3 Liberty ships every single day, a rate of production that finally outpaced the tonnage being sunk by German submarines. But perhaps the most devastating challenge to the authority of the traditional maritime establishment came from the very nature of Kaiser's workforce. The tens of thousands of women, minorities, and previously untrained workers who had built these ships represented a direct refutation of the old guild system that had dominated shipbuilding for centuries. At the peak of production in 1944, Kaiser's 7 yards employed approximately 196,000 workers. Of these, over 40,000 were women, a remarkable figure for the time. By mid-1944, women constituted 27% of the production workforce at the Richmond yards. The 3 Kaiser yards in the Pacific Northwest alone employed over 31,000 women. African American workers, numbered in the tens of thousands, were employed in skilled positions, including welding, fitting, crane operation, and even supervisory roles, a level of workplace integration that was highly unusual for 1940s America. The democratization of skilled work that Kaiser had championed carried implications that extended far beyond wartime production. By proving that complex manufacturing could be performed by trained workers rather than requiring generational craft expertise, Kaiser's shipyards challenged fundamental assumptions about labor, skill, and industrial organization. The story of the Liberty ships did not end with the war. In fact, their post-war service is a remarkable testament to the quality of their construction. Designed as emergency vessels with an expected service life of just 5 years, Many of these ships remained in service for decades. The SS John W. Brown, built in 1942, is still operational as a museum ship in Baltimore, a living piece of history 82 years after its construction. The SS Jeremiah O'Brien, also built in 1942, is preserved in San Francisco, and, in a remarkable feat of engineering, sailed to Normandy under its own power in 1994 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of D-Day. Of the 2,510 Liberty ships that survived the war, approximately 835 remained in commercial service through the 1960s. Many sold to foreign shipping companies and operating into the 1970s. The last Liberty ship ever built, the SS Albert M. Bow, was not scrapped but converted into a fish cannery ship and, as of today, still exists as the landlocked headquarters of Trident Seafoods in Kodiak, Alaska. The economic and social impact of the Liberty ship program was equally profound. The massive demand for steel fueled the expansion of the American steel industry, particularly on the West Coast, where Kaiser built the Fontana steel mill specifically to supply his shipyards. This mill, completed 5 months ahead of schedule, established California as a major steel-producing region for the first time. The city of Richmond, California, saw its population explode from 23,000 in 1940 to over 100,000 by 1943, a boom driven entirely by shipyard employment. In an unexpected but enduring legacy, the healthcare system that Kaiser established to provide medical care for his massive workforce, a prepaid healthcare program developed in partnership with physician Sidney Garfield, evolved into Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest health maintenance organizations in the United States. The technological and organizational innovations of the Liberty ship program rippled through countless industries. The welding techniques that were refined under the intense pressure of wartime production became standard practice in structural steel construction, petroleum refining, and pressure vessel manufacturing. The prefabrication methods pioneered at Richmond influenced construction practices in housing, bridge building, and industrial facilities. The organizational principles of parallel production, simplified specifications, and rapid worker training became foundational concepts in the fields of operations management and industrial engineering. Ultimately, the Liberty ship program was a story of transformation. It was a testament to the profound truth that ordinary people, when given the opportunity and the right organization, can achieve extraordinary results. It proved that industries that had been resistant to change for centuries could be revolutionized in a matter of months when necessity and innovation converge. As Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, reflected in his post-war memoir, "The Pacific War was won in the shipyards of Richmond, Portland, and Baltimore, as much as on the beaches of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The Liberty ships, more than just cargo vessels, were tangible proof that human ingenuity, when unshackled from the constraints of tradition, can accomplish the seemingly impossible." That is the enduring legacy of Henry J. Kaiser, a legacy carved not in steel, but in a transformed understanding of what dedicated people can achieve.